3 hours I spent in that kitchen, sweating over a perfect dinner like some desperate housewife from the 50s. The chicken marsala was golden, the asparagus crisp, the wine breathing at exactly room temperature. Candles flickered across our dining room table, casting romantic shadows on the walls of our modest Massachusetts home. I should have known better. The front door slammed open at 8:30, just as I was plating the final touches. Vanessa McGrath, my wife of 7 years, stumbled through the doorway with her usual entourage of shallow friends trailing behind her like gossipy ducklings. "Oh my God, Eli? What is all this?" Vanessa's voice dripped with disgust as she surveyed my carefully prepared anniversary dinner. Her perfectly styled blonde hair caught the candlelight, but her blue eyes were cold as winter ice. "Sierra, look at this. He's trying to be romantic again. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, and tell me in the comments what city you're watching from." Sierra Martinez, Vanessa's best friend and professional enabler, let out a shrill laugh that could shatter wine glasses. "Oh, that's so desperate. Eli, honey, you know Vanessa doesn't do the whole domestic thing, right?" I stood there in my work clothes, jeans and a flannel shirt, still smelling like sawdust from the construction site, holding a plate of food I'd spent my afternoon perfecting. The third member of their toxic trio, Tara Walsh from Vanessa's office, was already pulling out her phone to document my humiliation. "Seriously, Eli, this is pathetic," Vanessa continued, her voice getting louder and more cruel with each word. "All these candles, the fancy food, the music. You look desperate, like really, really desperate." The three women erupted in laughter, their voices echoing off the walls of our small dining room. I felt something cold settle in my chest, a familiar sensation I'd been ignoring for months. The realization that my wife didn't just dislike me, she actively enjoyed hurting me. I set the plate down carefully on the table, my hands steadier than they had any right to be. Then, one by one, I blew out each candle, the room growing darker with every breath. "You're absolutely right, Vanessa," I said, my voice quiet but carrying clearly in the sudden silence. "This is over." I walked past the three women, grabbed my jacket from the hook by the door, and stepped out into the cool October night. Behind me, I heard Vanessa's voice, uncertainty creeping in for the first time. "Eli? Where are you going? Eli?" But I was already walking down Maple Street toward Lenny's bar, my mind racing with a single, crystal-clear thought. Tonight, I stopped being her husband. Tonight, I became something else entirely. The walk to Lenny's took 15 minutes, enough time for the cold anger in my chest to crystallize into something harder, more purposeful. Lenny's bar sat on the corner of Main and Oak, a dive bar that had been serving the blue-collar workers of Millbrook, Massachusetts for 40 years. The neon sign flickered erratically, casting red and blue shadows on the cracked sidewalk. Inside, the familiar smell of beer and fried food wrapped around me like an old friend. Lenny Morrison, the owner and bartender, looked up from wiping down glasses with his perpetually stained towel. He was 60-something, gray-bearded, and had the kind of weathered face that spoke of decades listening to other people's problems. "Eli McGrath," Lenny said, his gravelly voice carrying a note of surprise. "Don't usually see you here on a Tuesday night. Thought you'd be home with the missus." I slid onto a bar stool and gestured for a beer. "Change of plans, Lenny." "Permanent change." He pulled a draft beer and set it in front of me, his sharp eyes studying my face. "That kind of night, huh?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text message. Then another. Then 3 more in rapid succession. I glanced at the screen and saw Vanessa's name lighting up with increasingly frantic messages. "Where did you go? Eli, come home. We need to talk. Stop being dramatic. You're embarrassing me in front of my friends. Answer me." I turned the phone face down on the bar and took a long drink of beer. "Lenny, you ever been married?" "Twice," he replied with a dry chuckle. "First one left me for a traveling salesman. Second one died of cancer 5 years ago. Why?" "Just wondering when you know it's really over." Lenny leaned against the bar, his expression growing serious. "In my experience, it's not when you stop loving them. It's when you stop caring if they love you back." I nodded, feeling the truth of those words settle in my bones. My phone buzzed again, but I didn't even glance at it this time. "Another beer, Lenny, and maybe some of those wings. Suddenly, I'm hungry." As Lenny moved to get my order, I heard the familiar rumble of a diesel engine outside. Through the window, I saw Mo Patterson's pickup truck pulling into the parking lot. Mo had worked on my construction crew for 8 years, and he had an uncanny ability to show up exactly when I needed him most. The door chimed as Mo walked in, his massive frame filling the doorway. At 6'4" and built like a linebacker, Mo looked intimidating until you saw his easy smile and kind eyes. He spotted me at the bar and ambled over, his work boots heavy on the wooden floor, Well, well, Mo said, settling onto the stool next to mine. Eli McGrath drowning his sorrows on a Tuesday night. This should be interesting. Not drowning, I corrected. Planning. Mo ordered a beer and studied my face with the same intensity he used to read blueprints. Planning what, exactly? I was about to answer when my phone lit up again. This time, it wasn't Vanessa calling. It was a text message from an unknown number, but when I opened it, I recognized the content immediately. Can't wait to see you tomorrow night. Same hotel, -B. The message was clearly meant for Vanessa. Somehow, in her panic over my sudden departure, she'd grabbed the wrong phone from our kitchen counter. My phone. Which meant her phone, with all her secrets, was sitting unattended in our house. I showed the message to Mo, whose eyebrows shot up toward his hairline. Well, I'll be damned, he muttered. How long you think this has been going on? Long enough, I replied, finishing my beer and standing up. Mo, you busy tomorrow? For you? My schedule just cleared. What do you need? I pulled on my jacket and dropped a 20 on the bar. I need to do some research, and I might need a witness. As we walked toward the door, Lenny called out behind us. Eli, whatever you're planning, make sure it's worth it. I turned back and met his eyes. Oh, it will be. Trust me. The walk home was quiet, Mo's truck following slowly behind me as I processed what I'd learned. Vanessa was having an affair. The signs had been there for months. Late nights at the office, mysterious phone calls, new clothes, and perfume, but I'd chosen to ignore them. Now, with concrete proof in my hand, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Clarity. Our house sat at the end of Maple Street, a modest 2-story colonial with white siding and black shutters. Vanessa's car was in the driveway, but Sierra and Tara's vehicles were gone. The living room windows glowed with warm light, and I could see Vanessa pacing back and forth, and probably wondering where I'd disappeared to. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, looking at the house we'd bought together 5 years ago. We'd been happy then, or at least I thought we had been. Now I wondered how much of our marriage had been real, and how much had been an elaborate performance. You okay, boss? Mo asked, rolling down his truck window. Yeah, I said, and meant it. I'm better than okay. I'll see you tomorrow morning. As Mo drove away, I walked up the front steps and opened the door. Vanessa was waiting for me in the living room, her arms crossed and her face set in an expression of righteous anger. Where the hell have you been? She demanded. You can't just walk out in the middle of dinner like that. It was rude and embarrassing. I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt nothing but cold calculation. Where's your phone, Vanessa? The question caught her off guard. What? Your phone. Where is it? She glanced toward the kitchen, confusion replacing anger on her face. It should be in my purse. Why? I held up my phone, showing her the text from B. Because you grabbed the wrong one when you were busy humiliating me in front of your friends. The color drained from Vanessa's face as she read the message. For a moment, she looked genuinely panicked, vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen in years. Then her expression hardened, and I watched her transform into someone I barely recognized. Nas, it's not what you think, she said, her voice steady but her hands shaking slightly. Really? I walked past her into the kitchen and picked up her phone from the counter. Then you won't mind if I take a look at this. Eli, don't. There was desperation in her voice now. Please, we can talk about this. But I was already scrolling through her messages, and what I found was worse than I'd imagined. Months of conversations with someone named Brandon Hale, explicit photos, plans for secret meetings, discussions about how boring and pathetic I was, how she was only staying married to me for financial security while she figured out her next move. I set the phone down carefully on the kitchen counter and turned to face my wife. She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks in black streaks. How long? I asked. Eli, please. How long, Vanessa? She took a shaky breath. 6 months. Maybe 7. I nodded, feeling strangely calm. And you were planning to leave me for him? I don't know. Maybe. I'm confused, Eli. I need time to figure things out. Time, I repeated. Right. I walked to the closet and pulled out a suitcase, setting it on the coffee table in front of her. What are you doing? She asked. Saving you the trouble of figuring things out, I replied. Pack your things, Vanessa. Tonight. You can't kick me out. This is my house, too. I smiled then, the first genuine smile I'd felt all evening. Actually, I can. See? The house is in my name only, remember? You insisted on keeping your maiden name and separate finances because you valued your independence. Well, congratulations. You're about to get all the independence you can handle. The next morning dawned gray and cold, Typical October weather for Massachusetts. I woke up alone for the first time in 7 years, and instead of feeling lonely, I felt liberated. Vanessa had packed a bag and left around midnight, muttering about staying with Sierra until we could work things out. There wouldn't be any working things out. Not anymore. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table with Vanessa's phone, scrolling through months of betrayal. The messages painted a clear picture of a woman who viewed her marriage as a convenience and her husband as a joke. But they also revealed something else. Brandon Hale wasn't just some random guy she'd met at a bar. He was a local entrepreneur, the kind of flashy businessman who drove expensive cars and threw his money around to impress people. More importantly, he was married too. My phone rang at 7:30. Mo's name appeared on the screen. "Morning, boss." His cheerful voice boomed through the speaker. "How'd the rest of your evening go?" "Educational," I replied. "Very educational. You still up for that research project?" "Absolutely. What do you need me to do?" "Meet me at the diner on Route 9 in an hour. And Mo, bring your camera." The Route 9 diner was a classic Massachusetts establishment, complete with red vinyl booths and a waitress named Dolores who'd been serving coffee and attitude for 30 years. I arrived first and claimed a corner booth where we could talk without being overheard. Mo showed up 10 minutes later, sliding his bulk into the seat across from me. "All right, Eli, lay it on me. What exactly are we dealing with here?" I filled him in on everything, the affair, the cruel messages, Vanessa's plan to string me along while she figured out her next move. Mo listened without interruption, his expression growing darker with each detail. "Jesus, Eli," he said when I finished. "You know, I never liked Vanessa much, but this is cold, even for her." "It gets worse," I said, showing him some of the messages on her phone. "Look at this one from last week." Mo read aloud. "Eli's working late again on that stupid renovation project. Perfect timing for us. He's so clueless, I almost feel bad for him. Almost." Mo looked up, his jaw tight. "What a piece of work." "And this Brandon guy," I continued. "He's not just some innocent victim. Look at these messages. He knows I exist, knows Vanessa's married, and he's actively encouraging her to leave me." I showed Mo a particularly damning exchange where Brandon suggested ways Vanessa could hide money from me and recommended a divorce lawyer who specialized in maximizing settlements for women. "So what's the plan?" Mo asked. Before I could answer, my attention was caught by a familiar voice from the booth behind us. I turned slightly and saw Mrs. Eleanor Kitteridge, my 70-something neighbor, holding court with two other elderly women. Mrs. Kitteridge had lived on Maple Street for 40 years and knew everyone's business better than they knew it themselves. "Saw that McGrath girl coming home at all hours last night," she was saying in her carrying whisper. "Had a suitcase with her, too. And earlier in the evening, there was quite the commotion at their house. Raised voices, doors slamming." I caught Mo's eye and nodded toward Mrs. Kitteridge. He grinned and nodded back. In a town like Millbrook, information was currency, and Mrs. Kitteridge was the Federal Reserve. "Excuse me, Mrs. Kitteridge," I said, turning around in my seat. I couldn't help but overhear. "I hope we didn't disturb you last night." The elderly woman's eyes lit up with the prospect of first-hand gossip. "Oh, Eli. How are you, dear? And don't worry about the noise. These old houses carry sound, you know. Is everything all right?" I saw Vanessa leaving with luggage. "We're having some marital difficulties," I said, injecting just the right amount of sadness into my voice. "I'm afraid Vanessa has been... well, let's just say she's been spending time with someone else." Mrs. Kitteridge's companions leaned forward eagerly. This was premium gossip material. "Oh my," Mrs. Kitteridge said, her voice full of sympathy. "I'm so sorry to hear that, Eli. You're such a good man. Always so polite, always taking care of that house. Vanessa doesn't know how lucky she is." "Was," I corrected gently. How lucky she was. I spent another 10 minutes carefully planting seeds of information with Mrs. Kitteridge and her friends. By the time Mo and I left the diner, I knew that half of Millbrook would know about Vanessa's affair by dinner time. In a small town, reputation was everything, and Vanessa's was about to take a serious hit. Phase 1 complete, I told Mo as we walked to our trucks. Now for Phase 2, which is, we're going to pay Mr. Brandon Hale a visit. According to the information I'd gleaned from Vanessa's phone, Brandon owned a small tech consulting company called Hale Innovations. His office was in a converted warehouse in the trendy part of downtown Millbrook, the area where young professionals went to drink overpriced coffee and pretend they were living in Boston. Mo and I parked across the street and observed the building for an hour. At 11:30, a silver BMW pulled into the parking lot, and a man in an expensive suit climbed out. Even from a distance, I could tell this was Brandon Hale. He had the kind of confident swagger that came from never being held accountable for anything. That's him, I said, raising Mo's camera with its telephoto lens. Let's see what Mr. Hale's day looks like. For the next 3 hours, we documented Brandon's routine. He spent most of his time in his office, but he also made several trips to his car to take phone calls. During one of these calls, Mo managed to capture clear photos of Brandon laughing and gesturing animatedly, obviously having a good time. Think he's talking to Vanessa? Mo asked. Probably. Look at the timestamps on these messages. She usually calls him around noon. At 2 o'clock, Brandon emerged from his office again, but this time he wasn't alone. A woman in a business suit walked with him to his car, and they embraced before she got into a red Honda Civic and drove away. Well, well, Mo murmured, snapping photos. Looks like our boy Brandon might be playing the field. I smiled grimly. Or maybe that's his wife. A quick internet search on my phone confirmed my suspicion. Brandon Hale was indeed married to Jennifer Hale, a real estate agent who drove a red Honda Civic. According to her company website, she specialized in luxury properties and had been married to Brandon for 3 years. This just keeps getting better, I said, showing Mo the website. Brandon's not just cheating with my wife. He's cheating on his wife with my wife. So what now? I checked my watch. It was almost 3 o'clock, which meant Vanessa would be getting off work soon. According to her messages with Brandon, they had plans to meet at the Riverside Hotel at 4:30. Now we go to the hotel, I said, and we get some evidence that even Vanessa can't deny. The Riverside Hotel was a mid-range establishment on the outskirts of Millbrook, the kind of place that catered to traveling businessmen and people having affairs. Mo and I positioned ourselves in the parking lot with a clear view of the entrance. Vanessa arrived first, at exactly 4:25. She'd changed out of her work clothes into a blue dress I'd bought her for her birthday last year. The irony wasn't lost on me. Brandon showed up 10 minutes later in his BMW, and I watched through the camera lens as he and my wife embraced in the parking lot before walking into the hotel together. Got it, Mo said, lowering the camera. Clear shots of both of them entering the hotel together. Time-stamped and everything. I felt a strange sense of satisfaction as I watched the hotel entrance. For months, I'd been the fool, the clueless husband who didn't know what was happening in his own marriage. But now I had evidence, and evidence was power. What's next, boss? Mo asked. I started the truck and pulled out of the parking lot. Next, we go back to Lenny's. I need to think, and I think better with a beer in my hand. Lenny's was busier in the afternoon, filled with construction workers and other blue-collar guys getting off their shifts. The familiar atmosphere of honest work and honest conversation felt like a balm after the sleazy hotel parking lot. Lenny looked up as Mo and I claimed our usual spots at the bar. Back again, Eli? This is becoming a habit. A temporary one, I assured him. Lenny, you know most of the business owners in town, right? Been here 40 years, he replied, pulling 2 beers. I know everybody who matters and most who don't. Why? What do you know about Brandon Hale? Runs a tech company downtown? Lenny's expression soured. Hale? He's a piece of work. Came in here once about 2 years ago, acting like he owned the place. Complained about the beer, the food, the music. Made some comment about how this place was everything wrong with small-town America. Sounds charming, Mo muttered. Gets better, Lenny continued. He tried to hit on Sarah Martinez. You know, Sierra's younger sister who works at the bank? This was before he was married, mind you, but still. Kid was barely 21, and he was pushing 30. Sarah shut him down hard, and he got nasty about it. Called her a small-town nobody who didn't know a good opportunity when she saw it. I filed this information away. Brandon Hale was exactly the kind of arrogant predator I'd expected him to be. Why the interest? Lenny asked. He's been sleeping with my wife. Lenny set down the glass he'd been cleaning and studied my face. I'm sorry to hear that, Eli. That's rough. It's about to get rougher, I said. For him? As if summoned by our conversation, the door to Lenny's opened and Sierra Martinez walked in. She looked around the bar nervously before approaching us. Eli, she said, her voice uncertain, can I talk to you? I gestured to an empty stool. Sure, Sierra. What's on your mind? She climbed onto the stool and ordered a white wine, which looked ridiculous in the dive bar setting. It's about Vanessa. She's staying at my place, and she's pretty upset about what happened last night. I bet she is. She says you threw her out of the house, that you went crazy and started making accusations. I pulled out my phone and showed Sierra the text message from Brandon that had started everything. Her face went pale as she read it. Oh, she said quietly. Yeah, oh. I put the phone away. Sierra, how long have you known about the affair? She squirmed on her stool, avoiding my eyes. I don't know what you mean. Come on, Sierra. You're Vanessa's best friend. You go everywhere together, tell each other everything. You knew. Finally, she nodded. A few months. But Eli, she's confused. She doesn't know what she wants. She wants Brandon Hale, I said flatly. She's made that pretty clear. Maybe, but no buts, Sierra. She made her choice. Now she gets to live with the consequences. Sierra finished her wine quickly and stood up. Vanessa's right about you, Eli. You are vindictive. No, I replied calmly. I'm just done being the fool. After Sierra left, Mo turned to me with a grin. That went well. Better than well, I said. Now I know for sure that Sierra was complicit in the whole thing. That's useful information. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Vanessa. We need to talk. Meet me at the house at 7. I showed the message to Mo. Looks like round 2 is about to begin. Want backup? Not yet. But stay close to your phone. I have a feeling things are about to get interesting. I arrived home at exactly 7 o'clock to find Vanessa's car in the driveway and lights on throughout the house. She'd used her key to let herself in, which technically she had every right to do, but after last night, it felt like a violation. I found her in the living room, sitting on our couch with her hands folded in her lap. She'd been crying. Her eyes were red and puffy, but she'd also clearly spent time on her appearance. Her hair was perfect, her makeup carefully applied. She was dressed in the outfit she knew I liked best, jeans and a soft green sweater that brought out her eyes. It was a calculated performance, and we both knew it. Thank you for coming, she said as I entered the room. Her voice was soft, vulnerable. I wasn't sure you would. I live here, I replied, taking a seat in the armchair across from her. What do you want, Vanessa? I want to fix this. I want to fix us. I studied her face, looking for any sign of genuine remorse. What I saw instead was desperation and calculation, the look of someone who'd been caught and was trying to find a way out. How exactly do you propose to do that? I'll end it with Brandon. I'll delete his number, block him on social media, never see him again. I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust back. And why would you do that? The question seemed to catch her off guard. Because I love you. Because our marriage is worth fighting for. Our marriage, I repeated slowly. The same marriage you've been making fun of in text messages for the past 6 months? The same marriage you described as boring and suffocating to your boyfriend? Vanessa's carefully composed expression cracked slightly. You read all of them? Every single one, including the ones where you and Brandon discussed the best way to hide assets from me during a divorce. She looked down at her hands. Those were just fantasies. I never meant any of it. Really? So when you told Brandon that I was pathetic and clueless, that was just fantasy too? Eli, please. When you laughed about how I still tried to be romantic, how I still believed we had a real marriage, that was all just make-believe? I was angry, she said, her voice rising. I felt trapped, like I was suffocating. I said things I didn't mean. I leaned back in my chair, feeling strangely calm. You know what, Vanessa? I believe you. I believe you felt trapped and suffocated. But here's the thing. Instead of talking to me about it, instead of trying to work on our marriage, you decided to have an affair. You decided to mock me behind my back and plan your exit strategy while pretending everything was fine. I was scared. Bullshit. The word came out harder than I'd intended, and Vanessa flinched. You weren't scared. You were selfish. You wanted to have your cake and eat it too. You wanted the security of being married to me while getting your excitement from Brandon. Tears started flowing down her cheeks, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no desire to comfort her, no urge to take back my words. What do you want me to say? She asked. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. I'll do anything to make it right. I want you to tell me the truth. For once in the past 6 months, I want you to be honest with me. She wiped her eyes and looked at me directly. What truth? Were you planning to leave me for Brandon? A long pause, then quietly. I don't know. Maybe. Were you and Brandon discussing ways to maximize your divorce settlement? Another pause. Yes. Did you tell him details about our intimate life, our finances, our private conversations? Yes. Did you enjoy humiliating me in front of your friends last night? This time, the pause was even longer. Yes, she whispered. I nodded, feeling a strange sense of relief. Finally, the truth. Thank you, I said. That's all I wanted to hear. Vanessa looked up hopefully. So we can work on this. We can try to fix things? I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at our quiet street. Mrs. Kitteridge was in her front yard, pretending to water her flowers while obviously watching our house. In a few hours, she'd probably know every detail of this conversation. No, Vanessa, we can't. But I told you the truth. I was honest with you. You were honest because I forced you to be, because I had evidence you couldn't deny. That's not the same thing as genuine remorse. I turned back to face her. Do you love Brandon? She hesitated. I care about him. That's not what I asked. Do you love him? I don't know. Yes, you do. You're just afraid to say it because you think it'll hurt your chances of reconciling with me. More tears, but I was immune to them now. Eli, please. I don't want to lose you. You don't want to lose me, or you don't want to lose what I represent? The house, the stability, the safety net while you figure out what you really want? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. Here's what's going to happen, I said, sitting back down. You're going to move out. Permanently. You can stay with Sierra or find your own place. I don't care which. We're going to get divorced, and it's going to be as amicable as possible because neither of us wants our dirty laundry aired in public. And if I refuse, I smiled, and something in my expression made her shrink back into the couch. Then things get ugly. Then I start sharing those text messages with people. Then I contact Brandon's wife and let her know what her husband's been up to. Then I make sure everyone in Millbrook knows exactly what kind of person you really are. You wouldn't. Try me. We stared at each other for a long moment. Finally, Vanessa looked away. You've changed, she said. You're not the man I married. You're right. The man you married was a fool who believed his wife loved him. That man is gone. She gathered her purse and stood up. I need time to think about this. You have 24 hours to decide. After that, I start making phone calls. Vanessa walked to the door, then turned back. What happened to you, Eli? When did you become so cold? Last night, I replied. When my wife told me I was pathetic for trying to save our marriage. After she left, I poured myself a glass of whiskey and sat in my kitchen, thinking. The house felt different now. Not empty, but clean. Like a weight had been lifted. My phone rang. Mo's name appeared on the screen. How'd it go? He asked. Better than expected. She admitted everything. And now we move to phase 3. Which is? I took a sip of whiskey and smiled. Now we let the whole town know what kind of people Brandon Hale and my wife really are. The next morning, I woke up with a clear head and a definite plan. Vanessa had made her choice months ago when she started her affair. Now it was time for her to face the consequences. I started with a phone call to Jennifer Hale, Brandon's wife. According to her real estate website, she worked out of an office on Main Street. I dialed the number and waited. Hale Realty, this is Jennifer. Mrs. Hale, my name is Eli McGrath. I think we need to talk about your husband. There was a pause. I'm sorry, who is this? I'm the husband of the woman your husband has been having an affair with for the past 6 months. A longer pause. I think you have the wrong number. Brandon Hale drives a silver BMW, owns a tech consulting company. Yesterday, at 2 o'clock, he met you in his office parking lot. You were wearing a navy blue suit, and you kissed him before getting into your red Honda Civic. How do you... She stopped herself. Are you some kind of stalker? No, ma'am. I'm a man whose wife has been cheating on him with your husband. I have photos, text messages, and hotel records. I thought you deserved to know. Another long pause. When Jennifer Hale spoke again, her voice was different, harder, more controlled. What do you want? Nothing from you. I just thought you had a right to know what your husband's been doing with his afternoons. Can you prove what you're saying? Absolutely. Would you like me to email you some evidence? Yes. I spent the next hour putting together a comprehensive package for Jennifer Hale. Photos of Brandon and Vanessa entering the hotel together. Screenshots of their most damning text messages with identifying information blacked out. A timeline of their affair based on credit card receipts and phone records. When I finished, I sent it all to Jennifer's email address and waited. She called back within 10 minutes. Jesus Christ, she said without preamble. How long did you say this has been going on? 6 months that I can prove. Possibly longer. And your wife? Vanessa? She knows Brandon's married? Oh, yes. They've discussed it extensively. In fact, Brandon encouraged her to hide assets from me in preparation for our divorce. I heard Jennifer take a shaky breath. That bastard. I'm sorry, Mrs. Hale. I know this must be difficult. Difficult? She let out a bitter laugh. Difficult doesn't begin to cover it. We just bought a house together. We've been trying to have a baby. I felt a stab of sympathy for her. Whatever Brandon and Vanessa had done to me, Jennifer Hale was an innocent victim in all this. "What are you going to do?" I asked. "I'm going to destroy him," she said, her voice cold as winter ice. "I'm going to take everything he has and leave him with nothing. If you need any additional evidence, I'll call you. And Mr. McGrath, thank you. I know this couldn't have been easy for you." After I hung up, I felt a grim satisfaction. Brandon Hale's day was about to get very interesting. By noon, the first domino had fallen. Jennifer Hale worked fast. I was having lunch at the Route 9 diner when my phone rang. It was Mo, and he sounded excited. "Boss, you need to get down to Brandon Hale's office, like right now." "Why?" "What's happening?" "Just get down here. Trust me, you don't want to miss this." I drove to downtown Millbrook and parked across from Hale Innovations. Mo was waiting in his truck, a huge grin on his face. "What's going on?" I asked, sliding into his passenger seat. "Jennifer Hale showed up about 20 minutes ago," Mo said, handing me a pair of binoculars. "She's in there right now, and from the sound of it, she's not happy." Even from across the street, we could hear raised voices coming from Brandon's office. Through the large windows, I could see two figures gesticulating wildly at each other. "She brought backup too," Mo added, pointing to a black sedan parked near the building entrance. "That's her divorce lawyer. Guy named Peterson. I looked him up. He's got a reputation for being ruthless." As we watched, the office door burst open and Jennifer Hale stormed out, followed by Brandon. Even from a distance, I could see that Brandon looked panicked. "Jennifer, please." Brandon's voice carried across the street. "Let me explain." "Explain what?" Jennifer shouted back. "Explain how you've been screwing some married woman for 6 months? Explain how you encouraged her to hide money from her husband? Explain how you called me boring in your text messages?" Brandon tried to grab her arm, but Jennifer shook him off violently. "Don't touch me. Don't ever touch me again." The lawyer emerged from the office building, carrying a briefcase and looking satisfied. He said something to Jennifer, who nodded curtly before getting into her Honda and driving away with a screech of tires. Brandon stood in the parking lot for a moment, looking lost. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. I had a pretty good idea who he was calling. "Think he's calling Vanessa?" Mo asked. "Guaranteed. This is about to get very interesting. We didn't have to wait long." Within 15 minutes, Vanessa's car pulled into the parking lot. She got out and ran to Brandon, who immediately started talking rapidly and gesticulating wildly. "Can you hear what they're saying?" I asked. Mo rolled down his window slightly. "Something about lawyers and divorce papers." Brandon sounds freaked out. I watched my wife comfort her lover in a public parking lot, and I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. They'd created this mess together. Now they could deal with the consequences together. My phone buzzed with a text message from Vanessa. "We need to talk. Now." I showed the message to Mo, who chuckled. "Looks like the chickens are coming home to roost." "Let them squawk," I replied. "I'm busy." Instead of responding to Vanessa, I drove to Lenny's bar. It was early afternoon, so the place was relatively quiet. Lenny was restocking beer bottles behind the bar. "Eli," he said, looking up as I entered. "You look like a man with a story to tell." "Getting more interesting by the hour," I replied, taking my usual seat. "Beer me, Lenny." As Lenny pulled my drink, the door opened and Mrs. Kitteridge walked in. This was unusual. Mrs. Kitteridge wasn't typically a bar patron, but she made a beeline for my table. "Eli, dear," she said, settling onto the stool next to mine. "I hope you don't mind the intrusion, but I wanted to check on you. There's been quite a lot of activity at your house today." "Oh." Vanessa came by around 10 this morning with several suitcases. She seemed very upset. Then around 11, a man in an expensive car pulled up. They had what appeared to be a very heated discussion in your driveway. I nodded, unsurprised. "That would be Brandon Hale." Mrs. Kitteridge's eyes lit up. "Ah, the other man. I've heard about him. Jennifer Hale's husband, correct?" "You know Jennifer?" "Of course, dear. I sold my late husband's car through her agency last year. Lovely woman, very professional." Mrs. Kitteridge paused meaningfully. "I do hope someone has informed her about her husband's extracurricular activities." "Someone has," I confirmed. Mrs. Kitteridge smiled with satisfaction. "Good. A woman has a right to know when her husband is making a fool of her." She ordered a sherry, which seemed to surprise Lenny, and settled in for a proper gossip session. "Now, Eli, I don't want to pry, but the whole neighborhood is talking. Is it true that Vanessa has been carrying on with this Brandon fellow for months?" "It's true." "And you found out through text messages?" "Among other things." Mrs. Kitteridge shook her head sadly. "These young women today have no sense of discretion. In my day, if you were going to have an affair, you at least had the courtesy to be subtle about it. Lenny snorted. Eleanor, are you advocating for adultery? I'm advocating for common sense, she replied primly. If you're going to destroy your marriage, don't be stupid about it. My phone rang. Vanessa again. I declined the call. Not taking calls from the missus? Lenny asked. Ex-missus, I corrected. And no. She made her choices. Now she gets to live with them. Mrs. Kitteridge raised her sherry glass. To consequences, then. To consequences, I agreed, raising my beer. We were interrupted by the entrance of Sierra Martinez, who looked frazzled and angry. She spotted me at the bar and marched over. Eli, what the hell did you do? I'm going to need you to be more specific, Sierra. You know damn well what I'm talking about. Vanessa is hysterical. Brandon's wife showed up at his office with a lawyer. Their whole lives are falling apart. Gee, that's terrible, I said, taking a sip of beer. Really breaks my heart. This is your fault. You could have handled this privately, but instead you decided to destroy them publicly. Mrs. Kitteridge cleared her throat delicately. Excuse me, dear, but didn't they destroy themselves? Eli didn't force them to have an affair. Sierra whirled on the elderly woman. This is none of your business. On the contrary, Mrs. Kitteridge replied coolly. When people conduct their affairs, literally, in public view, it becomes everyone's business. Vanessa and this Brandon fellow made their choices. They're simply facing the natural consequences. Natural consequences? Sierra's voice was getting shrill. Eli deliberately set out to ruin them. No, I said, standing up. Vanessa and Brandon set out to ruin my marriage. I just made sure they didn't get away with it. You're being vindictive. I'm being honest. For the first time in months, everyone involved is dealing with the truth instead of lies and deception. Sierra looked like she wanted to say more, but Lenny stepped forward. At 6'2" and built like a linebacker, he could be intimidating when he wanted to be. Sierra, he said quietly, I think you should leave. She looked around the bar, realized she had no support, and stormed out. Through the window, I watched her get into her car and speed away. Well, Mrs. Kitteridge said mildly, that was unpleasant. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from an unknown number. This is Brandon Hale. We need to talk. Man to man. I showed the message to Lenny and Mrs. Kitteridge. Oh, this should be good, Lenny said. What are you going to tell him? I typed back, Lenny's bar. 1 hour. Come alone. You sure about this? Lenny asked. Absolutely. It's time, Mr. Hale and I had a proper conversation. Mrs. Kitteridge finished her sherry and stood up. Well, this has been most entertaining, but I should get home. Eli, dear, do be careful. Desperate men do stupid things. Don't worry, Mrs. Kitteridge. I can handle Brandon Hale. After she left, Lenny and I spent the next hour preparing for Brandon's arrival. Lenny made sure the security cameras were working properly, and I called Mo to let him know what was happening. Want me to come down? Mo asked. Not yet. But stay close to your phone. At exactly 4 o'clock, Brandon Hale walked into Lenny's bar. He looked like hell. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his hair disheveled, and his face showed the strain of a very bad day. He spotted me at the bar and walked over, trying to project confidence but failing miserably. Eli McGrath, he said, extending his hand. We haven't been properly introduced. I looked at his outstretched hand but didn't take it. No, we haven't. But I feel like I know you pretty well. Vanessa's shared a lot of details about your relationship. Brandon's hand dropped to his side. Look, I know the situation is complicated. Complicated? I interrupted. That's an interesting word choice. I would have gone with screwed up myself. Brandon glanced around the bar nervously. There were only a few other patrons, all of whom were studiously ignoring our conversation. Can we talk privately? He asked. We are talking privately. Lenny here is the soul of discretion. Aren't you, Lenny? Haven't heard a word, Lenny confirmed, polishing a glass. Brandon sat down on the stool next to mine, uninvited. Okay, look, I know you're angry. I get it. If I were in your position, I'd be angry too. Would you? That's fascinating. Tell me, Brandon, what exactly would you be angry about? About the affair. About Vanessa and me. Just the affair? Not the months of lies? Not the cruel messages making fun of me? Not the financial planning to screw me over in a divorce? Brandon's face went pale. She told you about that? She didn't have to. I read your text messages. All of them. Jesus. Brandon ran his hands through his hair. Okay, yes, we said some things we shouldn't have. We got carried away. Carried away, I repeated. Is that what you call plotting to defraud me? It wasn't fraud. It was just relationship advice. I turned to face him fully. Brandon, let me ask you something. Did you know I existed when you started sleeping with my wife? Yes, but did you encourage her to lie to me about where she was and what she was doing? It's not that simple. Did you tell her she deserved better than being married to a boring construction worker? Brandon looked down at his hands. Yes. Did you laugh when she told you about my attempts to be romantic? When she described me as pathetic and desperate? Yes. Then you know exactly why I'm not interested in your explanations or excuses. Brandon looked up, desperation creeping into his voice. What do you want? Money? I can pay you. Just name your price. The offer hung in the air between us. Lenny stopped polishing his glass and looked at me expectantly. You think this is about money? I asked. Isn't it? Isn't that what this whole thing is about? You want to make us pay? I smiled, and something in my expression made Brandon shrink back. Oh, Brandon. You still don't get it, do you? This isn't about money. This is about consequences. You and Vanessa thought you were so clever, so much smarter than the boring husband who didn't know what was happening in his own marriage. You thought you could have your fun and then discard me like yesterday's garbage. That's not... But here's the thing about underestimating people, Brandon. Sometimes they surprise you. I stood up and dropped a 20 on the bar. Your wife Jennifer seems like a nice woman. Smart, too. I bet she's going to take you for everything you're worth in the divorce. You bastard, Brandon said, his composure finally cracking. You destroyed my marriage. No, you destroyed your marriage. I just made sure your wife found out about it. Brandon stood up too, his hands clenched into fists. You think you're so clever, don't you? Well, here's some news for you. Vanessa never loved you. She told me so herself. She said you were boring and pathetic, and that she only stayed married to you for security. The words were meant to hurt, but they bounced off me like water off glass. I know, I said calmly. She told me the same thing last night. Brandon's face showed confusion. Then why? Because it doesn't matter anymore, Brandon. Vanessa stopped being my wife the moment she decided to have an affair with you. Everything that's happened since then has just been cleanup. I walked toward the door, then turned back. Oh, and Brandon. You might want to check your business accounts. I hear Jennifer's lawyer is very thorough. As I left the bar, I could hear Brandon behind me, his voice rising in panic. What does that mean? What did you tell her? But I was already gone, walking out into the cool October afternoon with a spring in my step. Phase 3 was complete. Time for the grand finale. The next morning brought news that exceeded even my expectations. I was having coffee in my kitchen when Mo called, barely able to contain his excitement. Boss, you're not going to believe what happened overnight. Try me. Brandon Hale's business is finished. Jennifer's lawyer got an emergency injunction, freezing all his assets pending their divorce proceedings. Apparently, Brandon had been using company funds for his affair. Hotel rooms, expensive dinners, gifts for Vanessa. Jennifer's claiming marital fraud. I nearly choked on my coffee. Seriously? Gets better. Word is that Jennifer found out Brandon took out a loan against their house to expand his business, but instead of using it for legitimate expenses, he spent a chunk of it on his affair. We're talking about tens of thousands of dollars. Holy shit. Yeah, and here's the kicker. Vanessa's name is on some of the receipts. Jennifer's lawyer is going after her too, claiming she was complicit in the fraud. I set down my coffee cup, stunned. I'd wanted to expose the affair and humiliate them both, but this was beyond anything I'd imagined. Where did you hear all this? Mrs. Kitteridge called me this morning. Apparently Jennifer Hale called her last night asking about Brandon's character. Your neighbor lady gave quite the earful about what she'd observed. I had to smile. Mrs. Kitteridge was turning out to be a valuable ally. There's more, Mo continued. Sierra Martinez showed up at your house about an hour ago. She looked pretty upset. Vanessa was with her, and they were loading more stuff into Sierra's car. Moving out completely? Looks like it. And boss? Vanessa looked terrible, like she hadn't slept in days. After Mo hung up, I sat in my kitchen processing this information. In less than 48 hours, Brandon and Vanessa's affair had gone from a secret betrayal to a public scandal with potential criminal implications. The speed of their downfall was almost breathtaking. My phone rang. It was Jennifer Hale. Mr. McGrath, I hope you don't mind me calling. I wanted to update you on what's happening. Not at all, Mrs. Hale. I hear things are moving quickly. Very quickly. My lawyer discovered that Brandon has been systematically stealing from our joint accounts and his business to fund his affair with your wife. We're talking about over $60,000. I whistled low. That's serious money. It gets worse. Some of the charges were for expensive jewelry and clothing that he gave to Vanessa. Legally, she could be considered an accessory to fraud. What does that mean for her? At minimum, she'll have to return everything or pay its value. At worst, she could face criminal charges if the district attorney decides to prosecute. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and concern. I'd wanted Vanessa to face consequences for her betrayal, but criminal charges seemed extreme. Mrs. Hale, I appreciate you keeping me informed, but why are you telling me this? Because I want you to know that I don't blame you for any of this. You were a victim too, and because I wanted to ask you a favor. What kind of favor? I know this is awkward, but I'd like to meet with you in person. There are some things about Brandon and Vanessa that I think you should know. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop in the next town over, away from Millbrook's gossip network. Jennifer Hale turned out to be a composed, intelligent woman in her early 30s with auburn hair and green eyes. She looked tired but determined. Thank you for meeting me, she said as we settled into a corner booth. I know this situation is uncomfortable for both of us. How are you holding up? Better than I expected, actually. The shock is wearing off, and now I'm just angry. She took a sip of her coffee. I've been married to Brandon for 3 years, and apparently I never knew him at all. What do you mean? Jennifer reached into her purse and pulled out a manila folder. After you called me yesterday, I did some digging. Brandon's been lying about more than just the affair. She opened the folder and showed me bank statements, credit reports, and business documents. His company is failing, has been for over a year. He's been hiding the losses from me while taking on more and more debt. I studied the papers. The numbers were damning. Brandon's business was hemorrhaging money, and he'd been using personal credit and home equity loans to keep it afloat. He told me the business was thriving, Jennifer continued. Said we were going to expand, maybe open a second location. Instead, he was stealing from our joint accounts to cover his losses and fund his affair with your wife. Jesus, Jennifer. I'm sorry. Don't be. I'm better off knowing the truth. She leaned forward. But here's what I really wanted to tell you. Vanessa knew. Knew what? About Brandon's financial problems. I found emails between them discussing it. She was encouraging him to hide his business losses from me while they planned their future together. Jennifer showed me printed emails that made my blood run cold. In them, Vanessa and Brandon discussed strategies for concealing his failing business, ways to transfer assets before his creditors could seize them, and plans for starting fresh together once they'd both divorced their spouses. They weren't just having an affair, I said, reading through the emails. They were planning to commit fraud. Exactly. And they were going to leave us holding the bag for Brandon's debts. I sat back in the booth, stunned. I'd thought I understood the scope of Vanessa's betrayal, but this was far worse than simple adultery. She'd been actively plotting to destroy my financial future. What happens now? I asked. Now Brandon faces the consequences. My lawyer is pushing for criminal charges. Even if the DA doesn't prosecute, Brandon will lose everything in the divorce. The house, the business, his reputation, all of it. And Vanessa? Jennifer's expression hardened. Vanessa received gifts purchased with stolen money. She participated in planning financial fraud. She's going to face consequences too. As if summoned by our conversation, my phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. Eli, please call me. I'm in serious trouble and I need your help. I showed the message to Jennifer, who smiled grimly. I bet she does. Are you going to call her back? Jennifer asked. No, I said, deleting the message. Vanessa made her choices. Now she gets to deal with the results. Jennifer and I talked for another hour, sharing information and coordinating our responses to the legal proceedings that were sure to follow. When we parted ways, I felt a strange sense of closure. The betrayal was complete, the truth was out, and justice was being served. I drove back to Millbrook feeling lighter than I had in months. The autumn afternoon was crisp and clear, and for the first time in a long while, the future looked bright. I was pulling into my driveway when I noticed a familiar car parked across the street, Sierra's Honda Civic. As I got out of my truck, Sierra emerged from her car and walked toward me. Eli, we need to talk. No, Sierra, we don't. Yes, we do. Vanessa is falling apart. She's scared out of her mind about these fraud charges. I unlocked my front door. That's not my problem anymore. Sierra followed me up the walkway. How can you be so cold? She's your wife. Ex-wife, I corrected, opening the door. And she stopped being my concern the moment she decided to betray me. She made a mistake. I turned to face Sierra, and she took a step back at whatever she saw in my expression. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk at the store. A mistake is running a red light. What Vanessa did was a deliberate, calculated betrayal that went on for months. She loves you. No, she doesn't. She told me so herself. She said I was boring and pathetic and that she only stayed married to me for security. Sierra's face crumpled. She didn't mean that. Yes, she did. And you know what? I'm glad she said it, because now I know exactly where I stand. I started to go inside, but Sierra grabbed my arm. Eli, please. She's talking about hurting herself. I'm scared. For a moment, I felt a flicker of the old concern, the protective instinct that had made me a good husband for 7 years. Then I remembered the emails Jennifer had shown me, the months of cruel messages, the elaborate plans to defraud me. If you're genuinely worried about Vanessa's mental health, call a professional, I said, gently removing her hand from my arm. Call her doctor, call a crisis hotline, call the police if necessary. But don't call me. You bastard, Sierra whispered. Maybe. But I'm a bastard who knows his worth now. I went inside and closed the door, leaving Sierra standing on my front porch. Through the window, I watched her walk back to her car, shoulders shaking with sobs. My phone rang almost immediately. It was Mo. Hey boss, just wanted to let you know. Word around town is that Brandon Hale's been arrested. Arrested? For what? Fraud, embezzlement, maybe more. The cops showed up at his office about an hour ago and led him away in handcuffs. Made quite the scene. I sank into my favorite chair, overwhelmed by the speed of events. What about Vanessa? No arrest yet, but I heard the police want to talk to her. Something about receiving stolen property. After Mo hung up, I sat in my living room as the sun set outside my windows. In 3 days, my entire life had changed. My marriage was over, my wife was facing potential criminal charges, and I was alone in the house we'd shared for 5 years. But instead of feeling sad or lonely, I felt free. The doorbell rang around 8 o'clock. I opened it to find Mrs. Kitteridge standing on my porch with a covered dish. Good evening, Eli. I brought you some pot roast. Figured you might not feel like cooking tonight. That's very kind of you, Mrs. Kitteridge. She stepped inside without being invited, looking around the living room with sharp eyes. How are you holding up, dear? Better than I expected? Good. You're well rid of her, you know. Vanessa never appreciated what she had. We sat in my kitchen while I heated up the pot roast. Mrs. Kitteridge filled me in on the latest neighborhood gossip. Apparently the entire street was buzzing with news of Brandon's arrest and speculation about Vanessa's involvement. The Martinez girl was here earlier, Mrs. Kitteridge said, crying and carrying on. Made quite the spectacle. Sierra's upset about Vanessa's situation. Sierra's upset because she's realizing she might be in trouble too. I looked up from my plate. What do you mean? Think about it, Eli. Sierra knew about the affair for months. She helped cover for Vanessa, provided alibis, probably even helped plan some of their meetings. If the police are looking at this as a conspiracy, Sierra could be considered an accessory. The thought hadn't occurred to me, but Mrs. Kitteridge was right. Sierra had been actively complicit in Vanessa's deception. The whole thing's going to come out in court, Mrs. Kitteridge continued. All the lies, all the planning, all the people who knew and said nothing. It's going to be quite the scandal. As if to punctuate her words, my phone buzzed with yet another text from Vanessa. Please, Eli, I know I don't deserve your help, but I'm begging you. I can't go to prison. I deleted the message without responding. Not answering? Mrs. Kitteridge asked. Nothing left to say? She nodded approvingly. Good. A man needs to know when to walk away. After Mrs. Kitteridge left, I spent the evening going through the house, removing traces of Vanessa's presence. Photos came down from the walls, her books went into boxes, her remaining clothes got bagged up for donation. With each item I removed, I felt lighter. By the time I went to bed, the house felt like mine again. The next morning brought the final act of this drama. I was having coffee and reading the local newspaper, which featured Brandon's arrest on the front page, when there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find 2 police officers standing on my porch. Mr. McGrath? I'm Detective Sarah Collins, and this is Officer Martinez. We'd like to ask you some questions about your wife's relationship with Brandon Hale. I invited them in and spent the next 2 hours providing a detailed account of everything I knew. I showed them the text messages, the emails Jennifer had shared with me, and the timeline of events I'd documented. This is very helpful, Mr. McGrath, Detective Collins said as they prepared to leave. I have to ask, are you planning to reconcile with your wife? Absolutely not. Good. Because I should warn you, this case is going to get messy. There will probably be media attention, and your personal life is going to become very public. I understand. After the police left, I called my lawyer to discuss divorce proceedings. Then I called my boss to let him know I might need some time off to deal with legal matters. Finally, I called Mo. It's over, I told him. The investigation? Everything. The marriage, the lies, all of it. The police have everything they need, Vanessa's going to be arrested, and I'm filing for divorce. How do you feel about it? I looked around my quiet house, sunlight streaming through the windows, and realized I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Oh, I feel free, Mo. For the first time in years, I feel completely free. That afternoon, I was working in my garage when I heard a car pull into the driveway. I looked up to see a police cruiser, and my heart sank as I realized what was happening. Through my kitchen window, I watched as Detective Collins knocked on what used to be Vanessa's door. When there was no answer, she tried calling. Finally, she left a card wedged in the door frame. My phone rang a few minutes later. It was Detective Collins. Mr. McGrath, do you know where your wife is currently staying? With Sierra Martinez on Oak Street. But Detective, she's not my wife anymore. Not in any way that matters. I understand. We'll find her. An hour later, the news was all over town. Vanessa McGrath had been arrested on charges of conspiracy to commit fraud and receiving stolen property. Sierra Martinez had been arrested as an accessory after the fact. I heard about it from Mrs. Kitteridge, who called me with barely contained excitement. They got them both, Eli, Vanessa and Sierra, led away in handcuffs just like Brandon. The whole neighborhood saw it. I should have felt triumphant. This was what I'd wanted. Consequences for the people who had betrayed and humiliated me, but instead I felt empty, drained of all emotion. Eli? Are you there? I'm here, Mrs. Kitteridge. How do you feel? I thought about the question seriously. How did I feel? Vindicated? Satisfied? Sad? I feel like it's over, I said finally. All of it. The marriage, the betrayal, the anger. It's all finally over. That evening, I sat on my back porch with a beer, watching the sunset over Millbrook. My phone had been ringing all day, reporters, curious neighbors, distant relatives who'd heard about the scandal. I'd stopped answering after the first few calls. Tomorrow, I would start rebuilding my life. I would focus on my work, maybe travel a little, definitely start dating again when I felt ready. I was only 38 years old. I had plenty of time to find someone who would appreciate what I had to offer. But tonight, I just wanted to sit in the quiet and enjoy the peace. My phone buzzed one last time. It was a text from an unknown number. This is Vanessa. They let me make one call. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. You deserved better. I read the message twice, then deleted it. She was right. I had deserved better. And now, finally, I was free to find it. I finished my beer as the last light faded from the sky, then went inside my house, and locked the door behind me. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new possibilities. But tonight, for the first time in months, I slept peacefully in my own bed, with no lies, no deception, and no betrayal to worry about. The candles had been blown out, the anniversary dinner thrown away, and the marriage reduced to ashes. But from those ashes, I had emerged stronger, wiser, and completely, utterly free. 3 months later, I ran into Jennifer Hale at the grocery store. She looked healthy and happy, her divorce finalized, and her life back on track. Eli? She said, genuinely pleased to see me. How are you doing? Good, I said, and meant it. Really good. How about you? Excellent. I got the house, Brandon's in prison for 2 years, and I'm rebuilding my business. She paused. I heard about Vanessa's sentencing. Vanessa had received 18 months in prison and 5 years probation. Sierra got 6 months and community service. Both women had been required to pay substantial restitution. It's behind me now, I said. Good for you. You know, Eli, I always wondered, do you regret exposing the affair? Some people might have just quietly divorced and moved on. I thought about her question as I loaded groceries into my truck. Did I regret it? Did I regret the public scandal, the criminal charges, the complete destruction of my ex-wife's life? No, I said finally. I don't regret it at all. They made their choices, and they faced the consequences. That's how the world should work. Jennifer smiled. I couldn't agree more. As I drove home through the streets of Millbrook, I reflected on how much had changed. The house on Maple Street was mine alone now, painted and renovated to my taste. I'd started dating a teacher named Rebecca who appreciated my cooking and never made me feel desperate for trying to be romantic. Mrs. Kitteridge still brought me gossip and casseroles, Mo still worked on my crew and made me laugh, and Lenny still served me beer and listened to my stories. Life was good. Life was honest. Life was mine. I pulled into my driveway and sat for a moment, looking at my house with its fresh paint and new shutters. 7 months ago, I'd been a fool who believed his wife loved him. Now, I was a man who knew his worth and wouldn't settle for less than he deserved. The transformation had been painful, but it had been worth it. I got out of my truck and walked up to my front door, keys jingling in my hand. Inside, Rebecca was waiting with dinner and a smile, ready to share her day and listen to mine. The candlelight had been canceled, but something much better had taken its place. Something real.